3 things you can do right now to help survive the upcoming financial crisis on this Money Monday version of Unlock Your Wealth Today. Your life fully invested. Welcome to the Money Monday version of Unlock Your Wealth Today. Your life fully invested. I'm your purveyor of prosperity and host, Heather Wagenhals. And on this episode, I'm making success simple by giving you 3 great tools you can deploy today to help you survive the upcoming financial crisis. And it's coming. Whether or not it's impacted you now doesn't mean that it won't in the future. And the reason why I'm saying this is we're all getting cabin fever. We all want to get back to the lifestyles that we had. But even if every business was allowed to go back to business today, that doesn't mean that every patron you previously had is brave enough to come out and try to live again. A lot of fear has been put in the minds of folks. There's a lot of uncertainty. Many people have been displaced economically, meaning they've lost their job, they've been furloughed, they've maybe had to take a pay cut, perhaps they've been able to stay working under the essential need clause. But in any case, things have changed, materially changed. Just think, we haven't been able to live. We've been told to stay at home. So even if businesses open today, that doesn't guarantee that we'll resume our lives as they were. I've been dealing with several people, some of my coaching clients that I've been talking to and personal friends. Even though things are scheduled to get back to normal, they're fearful about resuming life as we know it. And these are people, some of these people are high-ranking people. Some of these people that I know are people that do business with me. They're my vendors. And they're scared about resuming life, even if we could resume life today. And so that can have serious or adverse financial ramifications, even if you haven't been adversely impacted yet. And so here's a few things that I'm going to give you that you can do today to help make room for an emergency fund, especially if you've been kind of flying by the seat of your pants, happy-go-lucky, but like, you know what, I don't need to make an emergency plan. Well, guess what? The emergency is here. And so this will give you an opportunity to create an emergency fund, even if you're not making much or any money. So let's jump into these tips. The first thing that you want to do, all right, is to remain calm, or as calm as you possibly can be in this hypervigilant state that we're in right now. Now, what you want to do is defer every payment you have. Now, I've told this to some of my coaching clients and they're like, yeah, Heather, well, I can afford to pay my bills right now. And that's awesome that you can afford to pay your bills right now. But if you have clients, if you have tenants, let's say you're a landlord and you're a real estate investor, they may be defaulting on payments to you. So what are you going to do? Like, you might be able to pay your bills now, but guess what? In 3 months, you may not be able to, because they may get to go back to work, but then find out that they get fired or laid off because there's no business for them to be doing, because the people, the customers, the clientele of all of these businesses that have been closed may not come back as fast. So that's a consideration to make. So defer every payment you have. Banks are expecting this. They're aware of this. And so all you have to do, most banks now, especially the larger ones, have made the process more streamlined for you to be able to do this. So any mortgage payments you have, car payments, auto payments, recreational vehicle payments, student loan payments, everything that you pay money on, defer it. Get a deferment or a forbearance is some of the other terminology, depending on the type of loan or credit extension. And even credit cards that have minimum monthly payments can do this. So take advantage of it, even if you can pay your bills today. And the reason why is you're trying to create a little cushion for yourself, especially if you haven't created one, because this will help you survive going forward. because you may have money now, but if your income is jeopardized, you may not have money going forward. And you're going to be wanting to prioritize in our next section how we manage our debt. So defer everything. Some of them you can get deferments up to 6 months. And so you want to take advantage of that. And there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's an option. It's in all of your contracts. If you're a tenant or renting, whether it's commercial or residential, you'll want to apply for rent abatement. The idea is to avoid default, not damage your credit, and to be able to create an emergency fund at the same time. The next thing you want to do, if you are cash crunched, after you get all of these deferments applied for, and you have just a limited amount of cash, obviously you need to eat, okay? You need to be able to feed yourself and your family. So you have to decide how we want to make choices on what we keep and what we forego for now. And we'll talk about that in the next section of election versus abstention. But let's talk about how we prioritize our debt. So the most important things that we need is a roof over our head and food in our belly. So any home expenses are the ones that you pay, okay? Even utility companies are doing deferments or lowering your payment or doing workarounds for folks so you don't lose any electricity or any water or phone services. So just be aware of that. So home is first. So whether it's rent or a mortgage, that's the one that you pay first. You put food in your belly. The next thing, if you need transportation, if you are working or preparing to go back to work, you need a vehicle. How many vehicles you need? That's the question that you'll have to answer and say, do I really need 2 cars and 2 car payments? Can my family get along with 1 vehicle? You know, and they did that in the 50s. So it can be done again. And it is a lifestyle change, but difficult times call for difficult choices. But if you want to be able to survive and have 2 cars later, you may want to think about foregoing one of those now. Then the next priority, so pick one of the vehicles for transportation to pay. And then the next priority are credit cards, especially if you're having to use them to get over the hump with your cash crunch. But they are not the first thing you pay. You always pay your home first. The roof over your head and food in your belly. All right, then your car, and then your credit cards. All right, and the reason why I put credit cards so far down the tier is if you need to make a strategic default, the unsecured debt, which is what a credit card is, meaning they're not going to come and take whatever it is from you if you don't pay. There's nothing to take other than points on your credit rating. And time heals all wounds. And so we can talk about that later. So those are the ones that you want to pay third. And then finally, if you have them, seriously consider liquidating recreational vehicles that have payments on them. If they're paid for and the insurance is a negligible amount in addition to what you're already spending, then you can keep those, especially if they're helping you maintain your sanity. But if you're paying for toys that you are not using, meaning you have payments, you finance these things, you need to think about how valuable they really are to you. And in a cash crunch, those are the ones that you need to default on. They're the least important. Remember, roof over the head, food in the belly, transportation to get to and from work. That's the priority. That's the tier. So if you are interested, by the way, all you have to do is inbox me and I will send you this week's worksheet. So just find me on Instagram at Unlock Your Wealth or Facebook at Unlock Your Wealth TV and inbox me and I'll be happy to get you today's strategy. Now, finally, I want to leave you with the final thing that you can do. And this has to do with our brain and behavior research that we talk about all the time and why it's a more effective strategy going forward when you're trying to make decisions about your finances and your life for that matter. And I have this process that I call election versus abstention. And we learn about this in our Break the Budget Key, which is our 7th key in the Keys to Riches financial philosophy. And we're going to be releasing that, by the way, coming up this summer. So you'll be able to get a copy of that. All you have to do is inbox me to get on the mailing list, and then you can be one of the first to pre-order the new Keys to Riches. And the Keys to Riches, for those of you joining us for the first time, is a baker's dozen of financial concepts that teach you how to think like the rich and be in control of your own money. It also gives you specific techniques to create or fix your credit, eliminate debt, save and invest, all while transforming your current financial habits into healthy money management skills. And we do this one key at a time, 1 week at a time on Instagram on Wednesdays, 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern. Join me. It's live. You can hop in and be a part of the show, and I'll answer questions live. If you have questions, by the way, and you don't want to discuss them publicly, I can answer those too. All you have to do, again, inbox me on Instagram at Unlock Your Wealth or on Facebook at Unlock Your Wealth TV. So this election versus abstention concept that we talk about in the 7th key, Break the Budget, has to do with the way the brain works and how we want to set up the process for making difficult choices. The problem is the brain doesn't do very well abstaining from things, meaning being deprived or doing without. Think about any time you've tried to quit smoking, quit drinking, quit eating sweets, and you've got this mentality now that, oh, I can't have that. That's just, no, I want to lose weight. I want to, stop smoking and get healthy. I want to save money. And so we create these budgets, right? And if you're familiar with the root word of budget, it's a French word, budget. And it's actually a woman's handbag. But it's those little teeny tiny, cocktail purses, if you will, is another phrase for them. And they're just super teeny tiny. And they can only accept a few things: keys, lipstick, credit card, maybe a small wallet, maybe not even a full billfold. Some of them aren't even big enough for your cell phone, but they're just teeny tiny. And so what does that mean? If you usually carry a big handbag with the kitchen sink and everything in it, and now you have to go to this tiny handbag, what does that mean? That means you have to leave something out. And that's what budgeting does. And so we have to make this decision. It's like, oh, but I need my powder brush. But it's too big, it won't fit. And so all I'm doing is thinking about this powder brush I can't have with me, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to go out and maybe buy another one. Maybe a smaller one, something else. I get fixated on the fact that I can't have this, and it makes me want it more. Think about that chocolate cake that you can't have because you said, I'm on a diet. What do? You want it more. And because you're depriving yourself of the satisfaction that this brings, this chemical reaction in the body, this euphoria when you get what it is that you say you desire, that will do anything to release that chemical. Okay? And so that means that you're going to go off that diet. You're going to break your budget. You're going to have a drag of your buddy's cigarette. It's just the way it works. So how do we budget successfully knowing that that's how the brain works? That's the challenge. Because you're like, oh, well, then I'll never be able to get out of debt. Well, yes, you will. I'll never be able to save money. I'll never be able to miss. Well, yes, you will. And you have to position your choices in a way that work with the brain and the way it functions. And so I'm going to teach you this simple little concept. So the concept is called election versus abstention. And what do I mean by election? What's an election? It's a choice, right? So what if I positioned in my brain that I am not avoiding something by circumstance? Well, in order to lose weight, I can't have that cake. But what if I gave myself permission to have the cake and do what I just told you in the first thing, but defer the actual receipt of that choice. Kind of wild, huh? Think about it. So instead of saying no, because that's the word that's just the wacky word in the brain, because the brain doesn't process now. So telling yourself you can't have that cake doesn't really do any good, because it's saying I can't have that cake, right? So you're still fixated on the cake, but because you've created this deprivation state about I can't have it, now we want it more. But instead, why don't we just give ourselves permission to have whatever it is, but make the election later. And we talked about this the other day. I talked about this. You know, the best thing about now me and future me is the way it works, because we always use this term, oh, I'll do it later. And later is kind of like a procrastination tool for whatever reason. It's a good deferment for what we're going to use here, but if you think about it, later never really comes, because when we say later, once this time has elapsed, however long, like I'll do it 2 hours later, like let's define later, right? So 2 hours later, so when 2 hours gets here, it's not later, it's now again. And so our brain isn't thinking about do it now, our thinking is I'm going to do it later, regardless of the time amount that you assign on it. So later never comes, because it's always now. So we're going to use this later to our advantage. So when it comes to the dieting thing about the chocolate cake, I can have the chocolate cake. I'm just choosing to have it later. In this moment, I'm going to have a drink of water, or I'm going to have like something else, whatever it is that you want, a bite of steak, a beef jerky, a piece of cheese. I'm a carnivore, so that's why I'm using those as examples. So when we think about this, how do I deploy this with my budget? So instead of saying, no, I can't have this, as we start evaluating the things that we need to avoid for a while, that we must abstain from. You know, you don't need 3 different television or movie memberships. You only need 1. Okay? And so how do I let go of some of these others? Well, give yourself permission to have it, but at a later time. So freeze memberships you're not using. There's no point in letting the gym auto debit your account if you can't go. And we don't know if they're going to be opened up on May 1 right away. That might be one of those others because of the close quarters and the lack of social distancing, and that we're sweating and we're excreting air and all sorts of stuff, moisture, that we may not be able to go back to the gym. So we can put all of our memberships on freeze. If you don't want to get rid of them entirely, if you're worried about losing that special pricing because the pricing's gone up, I get that part. That's something else that you can defer. But make it a choice. Make it something positive. Give yourself the permission or the latitude to have it, but just have it later. It's kind of a kooky concept, but it works beautifully because, you know, we have to work with the way the brain works, or it's going to seem like we're going to be sabotaging ourselves if we don't, because we're setting ourselves up to fail if we don't position it properly. We've got to position it in our minds in a way that our brains will accept it, because remember, our brains are working to do 2 things: seek pleasure and avoid pain. And abstaining from something is painful. It's at least a lack of pleasure, and that's what we're seeking. So when we do it this way, we don't trigger that painful moment of sacrifice, because that's what we're doing. Oh my God, I have to give up that cake. I have to give up this membership. I have to give up whatever it is. We have to look further down the road. And one of the best things, because nothing occurs in a vacuum, if we are giving something up, the brain's going to constantly focus on what it lost, like, right? So it's a vacuum. So why don't we put something more productive in that place? Instead of saying, oh, I have to give up my TV subscription, we can say, you know what? Right now, the weather's great. Instead of giving up my TV, I'm actually just going to do something different in its place. And so why would I pay for that? Oh, so now we faked our brain out twice. And we've been able to work with the way the brain and behavior works. And so it doesn't trigger any kind of biological response because we're not crossing that pain threshold. We're staying on this side of pain and the brain will accept it. So that's this week's Money Monday. And these are the 3 things that you can do right now to help you survive the upcoming financial crisis, because it will get here. It just matters how much time and how directly it will impact you, but it's coming. And these are 3 great strategies that you can deploy today. Again, if you would like to have the strategy, just inbox me on Instagram at Unlock Your Wealth or on Facebook at Unlock Your Wealth TV. Finally, I read a lot about the brain and behavior and communication, and I came across a really powerful quote that I wanted to share with you as a final thought today. Times are tough. Whether we realize it or not, we are in a hypervigilant state. We don't know what's coming. It's directly impacted our lives. It's not happening to somebody else. It's not the neighbors that are having a financial problem. It's everybody. So we're all kind of on guard. So we're all suspicious, and we may not be responding in our highest and best resource state. And so as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about how we treat others. Now, this former FBI agent and best-selling author on body language and human behavior expert, Joe Navarro, shared this in one of his talks, and it's the most powerful quote, because we don't know what someone else's journey is at any given moment. We're absorbed in our own journey, which we should be, because we should be figuring out what is the highest and best use of our time at every given moment. And that's the right thing to do for us. But we don't know where someone else is. And we need to have empathy for our fellow man. And they may not be doing as well as you are right now during this crisis. They may be struggling. They may have the coronavirus. They may be physically suffering. And I was just so moved by what Joe had to say when he ended his presentation that I thought that I would share his great quote with you for today. So the quote is, "The true measure of a person is how they treat those who can do absolutely nothing for them." Think about that. Thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to visit the website for more great resources, tools, and information to help you overcome your personal and professional challenges, to get out of debt, achieve financial freedom, and live the life of your dreams, irrespective of any financial crisis. I'm Heather Wagenhals. Now go out and unlock your wealth today. Cabin fever got you down? Well, I've got the cure. Join me as I speak live for the entrepreneurship and business track at the largest gathering of free minds this summer. For Unlock Your Wealth fans, they have extended the early bird registration for Freedom Fest until April 30th. Just go to my website at unlockyourwealth.com and click on the Freedom Fest link so you can join us this summer and learn more about your liberty and your wealth, as we have top speakers like Steve Forbes, John Stossel, Dr. Mark Skousen, the Way of the Renaissance Man and #1 market analyst Jim Woods, economist Stephen Moore, and of course Jordan Peterson, the Anthem Film Festival, and so much more. So to get the details and grab your early bird discount now, visit unlockyourwealth.com/freedomfest. See you there.
UnlockYourWealthToday.com is produced by Heather Wagenhals and the Unlock Your Wealth Foundation. UnlockYourWealthToday.com and its affiliates are copyrighted 2018 with all rights reserved. For more information on the Keys to Riches Financial Wellness Series, please visit our website at www.unlockyourwealthtoday.com.